So the Washington Post, of course owned by Jeff Bezos, billionaire extraordinaire, or maybe not so extraordinaire, has struck a deal with OpenAI that will provide summaries, quotes, and links to its stories. It'll be available on ChatGPT. So I got a couple quotes here. The first one from a joint press release saying, quote, "This partnership reflects a shared commitment to making reliable, factual information easier to find and engage with, especially on complex or fast-moving topics where timely, well-sourced reporting like that of the Post matters most. ChatGPT will highlight the Post's journalism across politics, global affairs, business, technology, and more, always with clear attribution and direct links to full articles so people can explore topics in greater depth and context," end quote. Another quote here from Peter Elkins-Williams, who's the head of global partnerships at the Washington Post, saying, quote, "We're all in on meeting our audiences where they are. Ensuring ChatGPT users have our impactful reporting at their fingertips builds on our commitment to provide access where, how, and when our audiences want it," end quote. And one last quote here. I'm throwing all these quotes at you. Another quote from Varun Shetty, who's the head of media media partnerships at OpenAI, saying, quote, "More than 500 million people use ChatGPT each week to get answers to all kinds of questions. By investing in high-quality journalism by partners like the Washington Post, we're helping ensure our users get timely, trustworthy information when they need it," end quote. So this is not an isolated thing. This is part of a larger trend of OpenAI partnering with media companies, of which there are many that they've struck these deals with, including, but certainly not limited to, News Corp, Hearst, Time, Condé Nast, and Vox Media. So they are really trying. The reason why they're doing this and they're striking these deals is OpenAI with ChatGPT. This is an attempt to legitimize their product by directly sourcing more up-to-date articles and information, right? So, because the big thing with AI is there's a big plagiarism component issue, right? Where if it's trained on, trillions of pieces of text, sometimes it's gonna rip from those texts word for word, right? When you ask it a question, right? And another issue is, I think this is getting better, but I remember when it first launched, the thing is that it was only up to date up to like September 2021 or something, right? So if you asked it about something that happened after that, it will be like, I don't know what you're talking about. That must have happened after the bounds of my knowledge, right? So having something like this, some kind of partnership, allows for, again, more real, perhaps not real time, but at least a little more up to date. And again, providing links and sources, right? So having that proper attribution shields OpenAI from those critiques of it's basically just a plagiarism machine, right? But this doesn't completely solve the problem, right? So currently, New York Times is suing OpenAI for using its content to train ChatGPT. The way New York Times sees it is that, this is our content, this is our copyrighted content. So if you want to use it to create a product, you need to pay us some kind of licensing fee. But what makes it hard, though, is that the way GPTs and generative AI work is that it consumes an inordinate amount of text and uses that to inform it's looking for patterns, right? It's not the same as I write an article and I don't provide the source for something, right? It's not as one-to-one. It really is like a human brain, where you're taking in all this information and then kind of filtering it and mixing it around, and it comes out through the prism of you, right? That's kind of how ChatGPT and models like it work. And then another issue that I think has really scared the media, the legacy media, is Google really disrupted legacy media, right? Because now you could search, and everyone wanted to be at the top of the search results. So that involves paid Google ads. That means optimizing your website with keywords like search engine optimization, so that without even having to pay for Google ads, your link or your article or your website will show up near the top of the basically playing the game, right? So what scares the shit out of these companies is that they basically have spent 20 years fine-tuning this method of basically gaming the system with SEO. Well, look, if we use these exact keywords, we'll be able to, rank highly, and we'll, this, that, and the other. But now what's happening, whenever you search on Google, Google automatically enters your query into its own AI model, Gemini. So, and it's sourcing links, but theoretically, AI could completely displace search because it's so much more efficient in that you don't have to like Frankenstein your question in a weird way so Google understands what you're trying to ask. With something like ChatGPT, it's very conversational. But because of that, you get your answer. If you want to do some more digging, or if you say, provide links so I can read more about it, otherwise it's going to give you an answer. So that really fucks up the business model of both Google as well as the companies, because they want you to click on the link so that they can then monetize your click, right? Whether it's behind a paywall, so you got to pay, or you see an ad on their website. So there's a lot of anxiety around AI when it comes to things like this, right? I won't get into the weeds on this, right? Because I've talked about AI in this channel. I think it's a tool. You're not going to lose your job to AI. You're going to lose your job to someone who knows how to, capitalize on AI. I use it for, mundane things like the title of my videos or the descriptions of my video, because those are not authentic artistic expressions. It's SEO driven. It's really just about gaming the system. So why waste my precious time that I could be using to be creative with trying to figure out what's the best keywords for my description so the algorithm will, right? Just fuck it. So this is why OpenAI is doing this. Why would Washington Post want to do this, right? Because again, theoretically, they're threatened. So they might think, okay, like a lot of people might argue this is short-term benefit, but you're ultimately you're catalyzing the downfall of your industry. Because eventually the fear is eventually you won't need articles in journalism because ChatGPT will answer those questions for you, right? Which I think is actually a real concern, though I don't know how likely that is because it still needs to be sourcing stuff. So why would Washington Post want to do this? Well, I think it's an attempt to bolster its brand, right? Because obviously over the past year, but especially in like the last 6 months with the election, the Washington Post has gotten into a lot of hot water about, political issues that they've had in terms of Jeff Bezos kind of putting his thumb on the scale in terms of what the opinion and political leanings of the paper can be or should be. So I think it's gotten a lot of bad press. A lot of people have unsubscribed from Washington Post. So I think this is their attempt to get their content in front of more eyes, right? Though again, Washington Post is behind a paywall. I don't know if it is like you get the first 5 articles free or whatever, but how is this going to work? Because ChatGPT, a lot of people just use it for free. So if your ChatGPT searches are providing you links to Washington Post articles, and you click on the post and it's behind a paywall, are they hoping people will then sign up because they want to read this one random article from this ChatGPT prompt where they basically already got all the info they really wanted from ChatGPT? So I don't know how that's going to work. But ultimately, I think deals like this is the future. The future is hybrid, right? People will always search for information, right? And have always searched for information. So what changes is the modes in which we do that. Not to undermine or dismiss the concerns with things like AI and text models like ChatGPT specifically. But I would imagine you had a lot of, we don't have, it wasn't as vocal because the internet was still very nascent in a lot of ways. But I imagine with the dawn of Google, there's a lot of people being like, oh, but it undermines the value of research because, there's something about the experience of going to the library and having to take the time. And that's all true. But But ultimately, most people don't give a shit about that, right? Like, that's the tension, is that nothing that I just said is wrong. It's just that does not outweigh the benefit for most people. And the same is going to be true for AI and ChatGPT and models like it. So, people will search for information, and traditional search, traditional media, and artificial intelligence, rather than being three potential ways to gain information or knowledge or understanding, they will all work in tandem to provide that information. At least that's my optimistic hope. But it still remains to be seen. Wow, what an interesting story. I'm sure you have some thoughts about the topic, so comment below, let me know what you think. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really, really helps people find the channel and makes me feel all warm inside. Until next time, I'm Peter Mancuso. Peace out.